Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the power or the transformative power of questions. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to settle in and get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it and imagine sparkling, clear, brilliant, pure oxygen coursing into your lungs, into your bloodstream, into all your cells and your organs, and enlivening and revitalizing your body. And as you exhale, exhale any tension or stress in your neck, in your shoulders, your jaw, your back. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it, and this time imagine brilliant white light coursing through your body, through every molecule of your being, and reaching out into the world beyond and connecting you with this bright, shiny universe that we all live in. And now let's just gently press your palms together and really softly, really softly rub your fingers gently against your palms to feel that tickling sensation that's so delicious and brings you into the present and into the experience of your body so that you can be here with me right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. I see Mr. Mann says, good morning, welcome, and welcome to everybody who's here this morning. I'm so glad to be sharing this time together. And what we get to talk about today is the power of, or the transformative power of questions. And what this gets to is a conversation around self-talk, because we always have this inner dialogue going all the time. And most of the time, we're not even conscious that it's happening. And so, what we want to look at today is how we can modify or transform our experience by bringing this inner chatter conscious and then actually taking a deliberate hand in directing it. So, let's think about the kinds of things that we might be asking ourselves in our inner dialogue, our perchance unconscious inner dialogue that would be creating less than resourceful states, like, why does this always happen to me? or or why is life so hard? Or why can't I do anything right? And on and on and on. And the thing we want to be alert to is that our minds are kind of like heat-seeking missiles. And what I mean by that is they want to respond to the stimulus that's there and available for us. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. We're talking about the transformative power of questions and the often unconscious inner dialogue that shapes our experience. So we were looking at questions like, why me? Why does this always happen to me? What's wrong with me? Et cetera, et cetera. So when we have those questions, our mind, as a sort of heat-seeking missile, wants to answer them. So when you ask why me, what happens is all kinds of answers come up that will justify why you, or what is wrong with you, and you'll get a litany of all kinds of things that are wrong with you. And Dido likes that the idea of our minds like heat-seeking missiles. Well, it's also kind of like a computer. We program it and it responds with the program that we give it. And questions are really powerful to get into that operating system to elicit a response. So when we ask things like, what's wrong with me? You're going to get a whole litany of things that your mind will generate to respond to your question. So, what is the prescription for shifting that dynamic. Well, the mind is the mind, it's going to answer questions. So the trick is to ask questions that are going to be generative and that are going to move you in the direction that you would prefer to be going. So, for instance, instead of what's wrong with me, you could ask, what's wonderful about me? And I know that that might grate on some of you because that's a bit of a challenge, and so many of us are trying to protect ourselves from our egos, but I want you to know that it's your ego that tells you all the things that are wrong with you too. So what we get to do is employ the ego to work for good rather than for ill, and to do that in a deliberate way. So help me out here. What are some other wonderful questions we can ask ourselves? Like, what's great about me? Or what what are my best traits? Or what would be the what's the opportunity in this situation? Like when you're encountering a challenging situation, instead of falling into why me, for instance, we can move into what's the opportunity here. That's one of my favorite questions, actually, because it's super generative. It requires us to move outside of the box of victimhood into a place of personal power to generate an opportunity. And so this is really truly a very simple but very profound tool to be shaping the quality of our experience and of our lives. And Dido says, "What can I? What can I grow from this situation?" Exactly, that's beautiful too. Is how can I use this as a growth opportunity? What's available to me in this to better myself? Uh, uh, what's available to me in this situation to make a contribution? Or how can I reframe my perspective on this so that it feels good? And last night in our coaching group, we have a monthly group gathering as part of the coaching program. uh, we were talking about creativity and looking at how we can generate creativity. Because what is creativity? Creativity is thinking outside the box, essentially, is expanding your experience or your awareness or your perception. And so, how do we generate creativity? And one of the str- most powerful ways to generate creativity is by asking questions that kind of twist your mind. I call them brain frying questions. Like one of our participants came up with a brilliant question that he was presencing himself to for a while, which was, "How can I see the wind?" And I love that because it really pushes the envelope of our common perception. Good morning, Sally. Thanks so much for joining us. How can I transform this negative into a positive? Exactly. Exactly. That's beautiful. I love it. And actually with the negative to a positive, you kind of get to a really existential point, actually, because just the perception of something as negative is giving you the key, or awareness that you are characterizing something as negative gives you the key to transforming it. So just by recognizing that you're identifying something with the judgment that it's negative gives you a pathway to turn it into a positive by amending that judgment. So I love that question. It's beautiful. And let's go back to this idea of creativity and generative questions. So by creating these brain frying questions, we push ourselves into a new dimension of experience and possibility. Because Sally, in your question, and Dido, in your question, how can I grow from the situation? That question would most likely be prompted from a place of feeling stifled. And so you're already breaking out of that box of being stifled by sourcing that question that is actually generative. And the same thing for you, Sally, when you're talking about transforming this negative into a positive, you're uh, allowing yourself the freedom to step outside of that judgment and that the limitations of that experience. So that's a beautiful and powerful thing. I mean, maybe you guys can think of a situation right now in your lives that feels really challenging or feels negative or feels stifling, and in your mind now take a moment to generate a question that could transform that experience for you and try it out. How does it feel? So my easy fallback is, what's the opportunity here? Uh, so I've had a challenging encounter with a family member lately, and so I can engage in the question, what's the opportunity here? Maybe the opportunity is to transform our relationship. And maybe there's an opportunity to have a frank conversation. Maybe there's an opportunity to perceive that this person was really looking out for my best interests in the communication that we had. There are many, many different ways to be looking at any given thing. And this gets us down to the conversation that human beings are meaning making machines, right? We attribute meaning to everything, and it's not that the meaning is inherent, it's coming from our interpretation or our judgment and perception. And so we get to recraft the meaning that we attribute to circumstances in our lives, whether it is an experience of emotion. Usually, when we're feeling a certain way, we go and look for why. And oftentimes, we create this elaborate story. I'm going to use story as just a function of being human. We create stories about everything. We create stories about why we feel a certain way. We create stories about why someone acted a certain way, and we often attribute negative uh, negative interpretations when instead we could be just as easily attributing positive interpretations. And again, I'm playing with the negative and positive notion here, but what we get to look at is that we're creating it all the time. So most of the time, the way it's getting created is unconscious. And what would it be like? What can we create for ourselves if we take a deliberate hand in this and use positive questions? Years ago, I had taken a number of trainings actually with Tony Robbins, and there was an intensive program. I think it at that time it might have been Unleashing the Power Within, but it was a very intensive week-long immersion kind of wonderful program in Hawaii. And one of the themes that goes throughout his work, and it's such a revelation, is that the quality of your experience is reliant upon the quality of the questions you ask. So if you're having a really hard time, one of the things to look at is, what are the questions you're asking yourself, or what is the internal dialogue? So I'm going to ask you to just sort of touch in and notice, what are questions that you notice that you ask yourself kind of routinely that maybe you could turn around And let's take this opportunity together to reshape those questions so that when it arises again in the future, it triggers you to remember, oh, I can ask that a different question. I can ask a more empowering question. And therefore, my mind, being the machine in a way that it is, this heat seeking missile, is going to find solutions and answers to those good questions. So, like, what can I do today that would generate joy? How can I feel joyful in this moment? How can I how can I get more excited right now? Even just asking that question breeds excitement. Try it for yourself right now and tell me if you say, how can I get more excited right now? Are you feeling sort of the tingling of excitement rising in your body, or at least a little bit of a shift? Do you feel that? Because I did when I said that. It was just my body's trying to figure out, "Oh, okay, excitement, what does that feel like?" And I felt kind of a little tingle in my back, and, it was as if my body was prepping to get ready for that. Now, on the flip side of the coin, we've all heard the chestnut, "Misery loves company," right? And that's true. So when people are talking about how terrible things are, and we join in with talking about how terrible things are, what happens? When I think about, oh, things are going wrong and I don't know where I'm gonna be in a year from now, and like, you can work yourself into an extremely negative, I'm going to use negative again, or at least unresourceful state very, very quickly by just putting your attention on things that are simply going to bring you down. Now, the same things can be spoken of with hope and possibility. And that's the key, because we think that reality is something out there. If it is, it's not something that we have access to, because what we live in is a world of our own creation and projections. And so even if we look at COVID and we look at maybe a change of job, or we look at, well, let's just look at COVID for a minute. Um, Sally says, things become terrible. They are what we make them. Yes, thank you. It's really true. They are what we make them. So let's make them good. Let's make them joyful. Let's make them better. When we're talking about COVID, I know that lots of people have felt that they're at the effect of it, that it's a crisis, that and I'm not saying it's not a crisis in certain contexts. Certainly, the death and the suffering that people have experienced as a result of COVID is something that is a crisis. Uh, However, the overall circumstance can be a circumstance of great opportunity. And in fact, I have seen where it has been a profound opportunity for so many people to reshape their social lives, to make new connections that they never made before, to expand their circle, to expand their businesses, to find new business models, to finally take the opportunity to make a change that they've been wanting to make for forever, but didn't have the impetus or the inspiration to do it. I see so many opportunities. And that's not to say that there aren't devastating aspects as well. Here's the thing, we get to choose. We get to choose our perspective. Dido says, when things are really bad, I don't even ask myself questions. I just know that I am not enough. So it's helpful to even ask myself a question. It's become a habit I've built up in the face of conflict or feeling a gap between myself or someone else. A question I often ask myself now is, how is this a cry for love? Wow. Wow. That's one of those brain frying questions, Dido, in the midst of being in a conflict, for example. That's really beautiful. And I love that you're talking about when we're in a bad space, we're kind of in it, and we often lack the resourcefulness to ask a question. But what you're saying is you've actually developed a practice of it. You have cultivated the habit of asking a question. And the question that you're asking is brilliant. How is this a cry for love? Because in so many circumstances, our altercations really can come down to a cry for love, a cry for acknowledgement, a cry for recognition. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I would encourage you to find another mind blowing question about, how am I not adequate to this situation, but how can I rise above this? Or how, instead of something that will counteract the I am not enough perspective, because shifting that will shift so many other experiences. And Sally says, oh, wow. Sally says, we opened up a holistic healing center during COVID. We simply went on faith and guidance. Sally, that is phenomenal. Phenomenal. How is it going? Congratulations. Um, let's look. So, Sally, you clearly said, "What's the opportunity in in the face of COVID?" Good for you. That's brilliant and so needed. Probably, more during COVID than ever. Having a holistic healing center is something that is going to benefit so many people. I imagine there's some remote work that you guys can do, and now that we're able to do a little bit more in person, hopefully. And what a gift. That's beautiful. So, exactly. Sally says it's great. People need us badly right now, probably now more than ever. There are a lot of people that are struggling through this time, and the questions that we ask to guide our inner conversation are an important part of really being able to move into a better place and a better experience. And the more we're able to move into a better place and a better experience, the more we can move into an even better place and an even better experience. So these tools, the idea of asking positive questions is really, really important. And maybe a question when we're in the I am not enough place is to say, where am I enough? Where am I enough? And really to look at the places in your life. And if you can't generate it from yourself, maybe to say, where would other people say I am enough? Because you might be able to be giving yourself more grace from the vantage point of other people. And I understand that there might be something under there that says, but they don't know me. But it might be a way that you can give yourself an inroad. And Sally says, yes, I'm also a life coach. And this is huge right now. Big time, Sally. Me too, obviously. And I'm gonna do a shameless plug. And it's really very short-lived. I am opening a new cohort for my coaching program. I take only 10 people. And I think I might have I potentially have as many as 4 spots, but probably maybe 1 left, and it's a 4-month coaching program. It's really for people who have done a bunch of work already. It's really a transformational program more than anything else, although it does go into business coaching if that's what you're wanting, and certainly personal coaching, but it's based on the core connection work that I do that I've developed over the past 30 plus years. And it shifts your baseline of being profoundly. And the idea is, or the tagline is, remembering who you are. So, what it does is it truly releases the things that are in the way of you being expressed as who you are. So, typically, the people that are in the training are people who are up to big things in the world, coaches, healers, teachers, people who are doing big things, making an impact, and have done a lot of work. And so, if you're interested, it is invitation only. There's only a few positions or places open right now for the next 4 months. It's going to start in September. So, if you're interested, I invite you. Actually, Dido has already invited you. Thank you, Dido, always. Has put in the link to my website, and if you want to go there, you can look at the page that is about the work, and if it speaks to you and you are spiritually and adventurous and brave, courageous, because it takes courage to really move through all of the boundaries and the barriers that keep you bound and keep you separate from who you really are. If that speaks to you, I invite you to schedule a discovery session because this is a life altering program. And I have to say, it's really, truly profound work. So, um, Sally says, "Oh, wow, I've been doing a lot of talk about stepping back into one's personal power and divineness. You're going to check it out. That would be awesome, Sally. And if it speaks to you, then schedule a discovery call. And what I do, Marianne, Marianne Baker, my buddy, my love. It's so great to to see you here. Sounds awesome. Well, it actually is awesome. And I can say it's awesome because I get to see the transformation in people that it blows me away. But I realize right now it is 9:28. I have a 9:30 appointment. So I get to say goodbye. Marianne and Sally and Dido, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everybody else who's joined me. I'm here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. This is the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Enlightened World Network that we're broadcasting through on Facebook, as well as my own page. But check out Enlightened World Network on Facebook for awesome programming. And until next time, lots and lots of love and great compassion. Have an amazing day and ask yourself some wonderful questions. All right. Until next time.